This week on One Day Leader, our contestants give solutions as to how we can help small businesses to thrive in order for them to make a meaningful contribution to our economy. Sanibonani Mzansi, ngiphinde nginamukele khona la ku One Day Leader, your #1 youth leadership show. Igama ngingu Pearl Shongwe. South Africa, imagine this. You're a struggling entrepreneur. You've plowed everything into your business dream, the passion, the time, money, and whatever other resource you have. Kodwa kuyakubhedela. Finally, the day comes that you fear the most, and it's time for you to close down your business. I'm pretty sure that a lot of you have been there, and at that moment you wonder what your future holds. That leads me to my question tonight. What economic conditions need to be in place in order for small businesses to thrive? What economic innovations can we use that haven't been tried before? Lapikaya, you're welcome to join the conversation tonight on our social media platforms. We are on Twitter and Instagram. Search for @OneDayLeader, and our Facebook page is One Day Leader Season 8. Let's see how ready our leaders are to tackle this task. Let's meet them. Linda Gugulethu, your vision statement, please.
Who taught us to look outside ourselves, our communities, and our unique values for solutions? For the longest time, Black people and women have been told that they are inherently inferior and without the capacity to meaningfully contribute to discussion. However, I'm a staunch believer in and advocate for Black and female intellect. But we have the capacity to meaningfully contribute to solutions to the problems that directly have an impact on us. Ngalokho ngithi people-inspired solutions for our problems.
Thank you very much, Leader 1. Tabani, good evening. Your vision statement, please.
The past month, I decided to meet Ubab Kumalo and Ubab Ndlovu at the taxi rank. I asked all the taxi drivers if I could possibly buy them taxis in bulk from the direct supplier in China and speak to a direct insurance company that's within Africa. They told me they can't do that. I wondered, was it because I'm Black because I was going to get them all at a half price and at a cheaper price? Or was it because the agent of change that came before them was one that they had never seen before? I still wonder. South Africa, join me today as I begin to build a nation centered in Afrocentric solutions. Bonyana nentombi za Afrika, masivukeni sishiyakele ngasemva.
Thank you very much, Leader 2. Zizi, good evening. Your vision statement, please.
I am on a mission to establish contact beyond the grave with the heroes of our past, to assure them that their struggle was not in vain, but most importantly, to remind you and I that our voices did not get drowned by the echoes of our forefathers from the bullet of the colonialists. Africa is not poor. Africa is being robbed by our apathy, silence, and neutrality. For economic transformation and emancipation, South Africa needs a new type of citizen, a catalyst for change, a surgeon for humanity, and an advocate for Africanism. If not you and I, then who? And if not now, then when?
Thank you very much. Zanele, hello to you. Your vision statement, please.
I envision a South Africa where coming from a township or a rural area does not limit your access to economic opportunity. Sabaweli, a South Africa where access to equal opportunities does not depend on who you know, but it depends on what you know. Thank
you very much, Leader 4. Good evening to you, Vusi. Your vision statement, please.
Mulalo wa mudzimu kaube nabo. The creation of a peaceful and prosperous society that includes all people of all races, regardless of gender and transcending sexual orientation, is the pursuit of a compelling cause to achieve a system greater than ourselves, that of making sure that small businesses are able to thrive in an economy, restoring prosperity and promoting the cause of peace for all. South Africa, I am the one you've been waiting for.
Thank you very much, Leader 5. And good evening to you, Belle. Your vision statement, please.
My voice, my mind, my life. 3 things I will use to fight for those whose suffering is silenced. Youth hindered by a lackluster education system. Women under siege by the patriarchy, from the gender pay gap to gender-based violence. Queer bodies systemically excluded in all sectors of society. The 99% who've been repeatedly failed by the state. And Black Africans who continue to live under the dictatorship that is the legacy of apartheid. South Africa, I give you my voice, my mind, my life.
Thank you very much, leaders, for your vision statements. Mzansi, last week you voted for your favorite leader. Let's take a look at our scoreboard to see who is leading.
This week's viewer votes see Bal leading with 3,611 votes and Vusi trailing way behind with 458 votes. Kushubile. This means Bal gets 1 point. Congratulations.
I'm pretty sure that our leaders here are very grateful for your support. Remember, your votes do indeed count. Now, let's see how you at home can keep voting for your favorite. To vote for Lindo, SMS Leader 1. To vote for Tobani, SMS Leader 2. To vote for Zizipo, SMS Leader 3. To vote for Zanele, SMS Leader 4. To vote for Vusi, SMS Leader 5. And to vote for Bal, SMS Leader 6 to 34708. SMS's cost R1.50. Now over to our guest judge. The National Youth Development Agency is a South African-based agency that plays a significant role in funding and giving support to youth-owned small, medium-sized and micro-enterprises. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the CEO of the NYDA, Mr. Wasim Karim. It's always lovely to have you on the show, Wasim. A lot of young people want to become entrepreneurs. Is it still difficult for young people to start their businesses from an access perspective and from a structural perspective?
Thank you, Pearl. So I want to talk about 3 things, yeah? Number 1, if you want to create an environment where SMEs thrive, you have to have an economy that's growing, yeah? Because right now, we're all just fighting over the same piece of pie. You've got to have an economy that's moving, and I think the government is really focused on getting money flowing in this economy. The second thing I want to talk about is to say the cost of doing business in South Africa is really expensive. Yeah? We've seen the cost of electricity and how that's impacting on consumers. And that's where government can really intervene in helping startup entrepreneurs bring down the cost of starting a business. Yeah? And then the last point I want to make is somehow we have a culture in South Africa of hurting people who failed in small businesses, when in fact, globally, small businesses do fail. 80% of them fail, yeah? And because small businesses fail, and then they fail better and they fail better, these entrepreneurs learn from their mistakes, yeah? So getting a culture of supporting our young people who've started new businesses and empowering them to move on and not give up when they may have not succeeded is very important if we're going to build a new generation of youth entrepreneurs.
We also have our resident judges who've been helping us decide on the debates for the past few weeks. They are Gugulethu Mhlungu, who has over 10 years experience in media. Currently, she's a deputy editor for a leading South African magazine and was the winner of the 2015 Columnist of the Year at the Legends Media Awards. And Ndumiso Hadebe, who's a one-day leader alumni who won season 2 of the show. He's an economist by profession as well as an entrepreneur. Let's give them a round of applause. What are your impressions? I mean, these are just some really big issues that small entrepreneurs face. They're trying to make something of their lives, trying to contribute positively to the economy of the country.
Small businesses are feeling the pinch. They also can't be the silver bullet to some pretty complicated, complex, some of them global macroeconomic factors that are outside of their control. And I'm hoping we're able to kind of tease some of those issues out. What are some of the things that are in the small business owner's control? What are the ones that aren't?
Thank you very much, judges, for your contribution. When we come back from our break, our leaders will uncover alternative approaches to SME development in South Africa. Ningai Indao. Welcome back to One Day Leader Mzansi Mangingu Pearl Shongwe. Now, for their task, our leaders visited a world-renowned South African entrepreneur, Public speaker and venture capitalist, he's been extremely vocal about the structure of the South African economy and what can be done to allow new entrants to come in. Let's find out who he is and how it went with our leaders.
So the task was to investigate the structure of the economy and what barriers are in place that prevent certain people from entering spaces that are occupied by certain people. So small people entering big spaces, specifically looking at the economy.
I have been following this guy since One Day Leader Season 1, literally when I was in grade 8. And just the realization that I'm in his space with him having a conversation that openly was just a lot.
First of all, I didn't know who Busi Tembobai was. I still can't draw a full conclusion of who he is.
You guys do know I was in One Day Leader, right?
Yeah.
Really?
I was the judge in the very first season.
Yeah.
Anyway, so how do you want to do this?
Our engagement will revolve around monopolies, value chains, the barriers in place, essentially whether the South African government should then get involved in partnering with SMEs. We're hoping to walk out of here with ideas of what kind of economic conditions we need to have to create this better environment, and most importantly, how we can then enforce structural change that will allow Black majority to participate fully in the economy.
South Africa's biggest problem is that it suffers from selective amnesia. There are some South Africans who love to pretend that we got here by sheer force of free market will. We didn't. We got here because the system was designed to get us here, right? And it was designed to get us here socially, politically, and economically. There is not, in my mind, a single South African, black or white, who would rank in the global 1% of wealth that has not had proximity to power. That's not been our story. So when I hear, and I hear this a lot from big businesses, which are traditionally white businesses, let the free market reign, that's a fallacious argument. They want the free market to reign now. They were happy for the first 40, 50 years of their existence for an apartheid state to guarantee them the right to play and to exclude the majority. So when did this let the free market reign nonsense kick in?
Black people for the longest time have been placed, especially under the apartheid government, in the periphery of the economy. So firstly, we were outsiders in our own country as far as wealth is concerned.
The single most important thing you need to do if you want to fix this country is you need to fix the mind of the black person. If you don't do that, if you don't deal with the mindset of black people, and the fact that we come from 500 years of being told we're worthless, and I don't care who you are, if you're told you're worthless for 500 years, sooner or later you're going to believe it.
That was another light bulb moment, that we were trying to defeat something that is beyond us.
But it goes without saying that the average black person doesn't have the level of education that the average white person does. They also don't have the level of access that the average white person does. And it's not their fault the system was designed that way. If you look at South Africa's real problem at an economic structure level, it's that it is, and I've said this before, oligopolistic. What that means is there are few players allowed to play, and those few players use regulation, rules, and accreditation to lock out new entrants.
What does that mean for a young entrepreneur who's trying to start a business, who's very much being held back by systematic and structural oppression?
So when people want to understand why we've not had an emergence of black entrepreneurs at scale, it's precisely because there is a class of businesses today that dominate all industries, that have passed regulations and laws and make it impossible for new entrants. How many black funeral burial societies do you know? And then the real question is, how many black insurance companies do you know? Because burial society is a form of insurance. You put money in, and in a period of time they come back and they do good on the commitment they've made you. That's the very basics of insurance. So if all of our parents belong to these burial societies, then why don't we own our own insurance group? Where does that money go?
If we have an identity as a nation, then everything falls under that identity. We are able to move into a clear direction.
If they made me president for one day, I would do this one thing and resign the day after. change the labor laws. So what you need is a government that's going to go, we are going to force you guys to create a sectoral allocation of market capacity for small players. Because the presumption that the big players are just going to get out of the way, it ain't going to happen. And by the way, just a final note on this, it's not only is it not going to happen, but none of you here want it to happen. You don't want it to happen because if it did, your mom's pension fund would take a knock. This is, for me, here's like the fallacy. This is what I find fascinating about economics, is the people who complain about it are the people who created it.
The most valuable lesson that I've learned is the fact that the development of small businesses, small black businesses, depends on the will of black people.
Most profound lesson I walked away with today was, actually, I think it's a selfish lesson, but it was a lesson nonetheless. It was a validation of my feelings as a poor black person.
Knowledge is not the tilt of change. In other words, knowing doesn't make you change something.
And that was just part of the task that our contestants had to complete this week. Ndumiso, what were your thoughts and any advice for our leaders as they go into our debates, especially from a content perspective, because Gugu will be penalizing them if they're weak on that front?
Sure, I think this is a big topic. So I think for the contestants here today, there are a lot of issues to discuss in unpacking this particular matter. I think the best advice for the contestants, choose an area of focus with respect to your solution and grind in it.
All right, thank you very much. And contestants, I hope you're ready. Babugeli, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll get into our debates. Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us here on a One Day Leader Season 8. Shongwe. Now, one of the world's most influential economists, Mariana Mazzucato, published a book, The Entrepreneurial State, Debunking Public versus Private Sector Myths in 2013. Now, in this book, she detailed how some of the greatest inventions of the past few decades have foundations in public sector funded programs, often via military or academia. How much more can our government do, and what are some of those solutions that we're looking for? That is what our contestants are going to have to debate. Before they do that, let's take a look at the rules of engagement. You have 60 seconds to propose, 90 seconds to debate, and 30 seconds to conclude. All right, it's time for us to kick off our first debate, which will be between Leader 1, Lindo, and Leader 4, Zanele. You guys are familiar with the rules? Your time starts now.
In this debate, I'm going to focus on development finance institutions, specifically those who serve to finance and assist SMEs. So these are enterprises such as Kula Enterprise, the South African Finance Apex Fund. More specifically, I'm going to focus on how to alter their relationship with SMEs such that we improve an access to as well as the utility of funds. Briefly, because DFIs are incredibly politicized, it means that, because they are state agencies, they're incredibly politicized. This means that they are always expected to generate a return, otherwise it reflects badly on the government. What they therefore do is that they take their funds and give them to asset managers to invest, right? This means that they don't use most of that money to invest it in SMEs, to capacitate them with their businesses. This is probably why by 2017, only 3.7% of SMEs said that they actually received support from state agencies. What is my solution? One, DFIs must be given leeway to not provide
Leader
huge
1, your 90
return.
seconds start now.
Instead, they should focus on spending most of that money in SMEs. The reason why this is important is because we don't measure the success of government agencies by how much money they make, but on whether or not they make an impact on the people that they're supposed supposed to assist.
Linda, allow me to interject. Yes, we have DFIs that are politicized in the way that they give out funding, but at a point where a business is given funding, statistics prove that 80% of these businesses fail anyways.
Yes.
So what other non-financial constraints?
Let me tell you why it is still important that we proceed in this route. And here's the second reason why my solution is important. DFIs must have a different metric of success. When Zanele tells you about failure, she's telling you that these SMEs don't make a profit. Ladies and gentlemen, the measure of success for SMEs shouldn't be that they should make profit jump. What it should be is that it should be developmental, because a lot of these businesses are either starting up or don't necessarily have a lot of capital or information. But this is true. Proceed.
The issue of small businesses failing is not a purely South African issue. They fail
100%.
across the globe. So when we want to address issues that are non-financial, what else can you talk about outside of
But
businesses
you can't make me defend a burden that I didn't take. What I'm talking about in this debate is DFIs and their capacity to fund SMEs well. Essentially, why a metric of success that is developmental is important is that, one, we focus on an accumulation of
What is that developmental metric? Please explain what that
this is exactly what I'm telling you. So, for instance, we focus on the accumulation of goals. So instead of saying make
Thank you very much. Time is up. Leader 1, you can now conclude.
So instead of saying make profit, we say, for example, how many consumers did you get? We say, for example, did you improve the functionality of your prototype? But the reason why this developmental approach is important is that all businesses will inherently fail. The difference is that some businesses have the capital to finance their continuity, while SMEs will be left out because they're expected to generate profit jump. We need to give them an approach that facilitates their development. This ensures that, one, they have access to funding, and secondly, that they have the guidance
Time
to
is
use
up. Thank you very much, Leader 1. The tables are turned. Leader 4, it's your turn.
In a stagnating economy like South Africa, it is disingenuous in this debate to try and say that we must look for other metrics that are outside profitability. It is something that we can aspire to in the future, but we think in the short term we need to capacitate our businesses to be able to be profit generating. How do we do that? Before stepping down in December 2018, CEO of the IDC, Mr. Geoffrey Kaina, admitted that the challenges of small businesses to medium enterprises transcend their ability to access finances at a point where they even get capital to continue. Statistics show that they will even fail regardless. So when we look at organizations such as the IDC or NYDA, SFI and others, they breach that gap of capital. What else can be done to capacitate these businesses? When we look at things like marketing, the SABC one just charges 50,000 rands for one advert to play during Generations the Legacy. This means that even if a business has a lot of capital that they were given by the IDC, let's say 1 million, this 1 million is not sustainable to allow them to advertise at a mass scale such as a bigger business would be able to do that. So we think that to be
Thank you very much. The time is up. You guys have 90 seconds.
To be able to be profitable, businesses that are small need to be incentivized outside of finances to market their businesses and get them out there. Things like allowing the SABC, let me just finish this point, allowing the SABC to give some leeway to allowing these small businesses to advertise with the national broadcaster without having to pay an amount of advertising that a bigger business would have to do is something that we need to look at, because it means that even if they are financially given money such as grants, if they are not able to advertise in the mainstream, such as in the SABC, their products do not get out there and we do not get to know them.
What small businesses need is not advertisement. What they need is money for their businesses, as well as the ability to be given leeway to fail and therefore develop. We don't think that giving them funds to put themselves out there means that they will get that investment in the first place. Private sectors will never want to invest in these
at a point where a small business has been established, it has a product that can be sold, but it does not have a market because it keeps being compressed by bigger businesses that are able to advertise and advertise and advertise with a lot of money that they have. It means that that business cannot be profitable.
To that market,
what are you saying?
Sell if they don't have money to finance them being
then
able
it means that the Competition Commission needs to come in and allow these small businesses to get access to markets that are being pushed out of by bigger businesses. I'm saying that at a point where we have financial institutions such as SIFA, such as NYDA, and other institutions that afford small businesses the ability to get funding, things like the ability to make their books well, partnering with
Time is up. Thank you very much. Leader 4, you can conclude your debate, please.
Small businesses need support that transcends finances. When they are able to be given platforms to advertise, when they are able to, when the competition tribunal creates conducive environments for them to be able to sell and not be pushed out by bigger enterprises, we think that the ability of these businesses to be profitable will increase. We don't think that only development of these businesses is valuable, because that development needs to be coupled with profitability in a stagnating economy like South Africa.
Thank you very much, leaders. Well done on that first debate. Googs, I'll come to you. Given that the debate is quite broad, so were you happy with what the contestants managed to bring out in that first debate, Googs?
I was hoping for a more structural analysis. I do appreciate that you guys decided to focus on a particular issue and stick with it. But there were a few things that, for me, you kind of touched on them and then kind of left it. The issue of research and development, that in and of itself is a cost small businesses cannot bear themselves. And that is one of the reasons why we struggle. Small businesses don't have the opportunity to fund R&D, but also to be incubated. The issue of the cartel nature of the economy. You kind of touched on it very briefly towards the end, the role that an organization like the Competition Commission can play, and I thought that was quite important.
Yes,
but I think as a first debate, good start to the evening.
All right, maybe I should go to our guest judge to give us his thoughts on that first debate, and of course the verdict. You will let us know who between the two leaders took that first debate.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I agree with Gugu. I think we zoomed into one issue. I think development finance institutions were a big focus of the debate. And I think it is an important role to play, because in South Africa, the state is very important. But I would have liked to see us talk a little bit about how we get private sector capital into young entrepreneurs.
And the verdict, who took that
so
debate?
So Lindo wins this debate.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. And congratulations to you, Leader One. Now, for you at home, the voting lines have officially been opened and will only close on Monday at 12 midday. Do vote for your favorite leader. Ngok SMS Kamelithi leader, and their number to our SMS line, which is 34708, and it will cost you R1.50. Nikhumbula ukuthi your votes will be revealed at the top of next week's episode. And while we're still talking about SABC One, we're going to Koki TV license. Siyabuya.
As the NYDA, we're very excited with the change that comes with the new government. The presidency in particular is very much focused on young people, and the NYDA plays a central role in implementing the vision of government as it relates to its youth. We're going to introduce new and innovative funds, and we're going to partner with other entities like the Department of Small Business to bring comprehensive packages of support to young people who want to be and are passionate entrepreneurs. We'll be upgrading many of our service centers, and we'll be working with entities like the Department of Employment and Labor and our social partners, Harambee and the Youth Employment Service.
That message was brought to you by the NYDA. The NYDA is dedicated to playing a role in nurturing and improving the livelihoods of youth in our country. Tonight's debate topic, we ask what economic conditions need to be in place for small businesses to thrive. What economic innovations can we use that haven't been tried before? Now it's time for us to get into our next debate and see how the next two leaders will answer those questions. Leader 3 and Leader 6. It's your turn. Your 60 seconds start now.
We are dealing with poor entrepreneurial spirit, mental slavery, and political misconception. We need to realize that 1994 was not a democratic breakthrough, but the handing over of South Africa and its economy to white people. White people own over 80% of our economy and land, thank you to the Freedom Charter and the black leaders who for 25 years have been loyal to white supremacists and oppressors at the detriment of the African majority. We will see no economic transformation for as long as minority is being exploited by the majority, and for as long as the means of production are owned by the private sector and individuals. The corridors of wealth in South Africa are selectively open to a few, benefiting individuals. Capitalism. We're still dependent on other countries buying goods and services, but we're not buying shares. And we're also dealing with a huge problem in society of aspiring entrepreneurs with a businessman mindset, and that is something we need to tackle. We need a mindset shift. Now, those who joined the enemy class of capitalism at the expense of the working class must commit class suicide.
Time is up, Leader 3. Your leaders can engage.
Petrus Mutsepe, Tokyo Sekwale, Saki Matozo, Cyril Ramaphosa, who rakes almost 3 million rand a year while a whole family is reliant on 3,500 rand from a domestic worker, should pave the way. Yes.
Speaker, it's not contentious that white monopoly capital exists, but how does your policy tangibly address that?
So what I am saying is that those people who decided to join the enemy class must commit class suicide. And that also means that white people who found their way around the system need to then stop locking out black businesses because they can't meet pricing mechanisms. Because if you lock out the majority, we cannot have a sustainable society. I'm also saying that let's look at our education models. They are dominated by white liberal Eurocentric views. Why did it have to be Vusi Thembekwayo to tell me that there is no use in spending time on a 50-page business plan because with the changing dynamics of markets and the structures of the business, it becomes irrelevant? Why was that not in my history book or economics book in schools? Those are issues we need to address. And essentially,
Okay, cool. Quickly, two things. Do you really think people like Cyril Ramaphosa are going to jump onto the bandwagon and decide to redistribute their wealth? Unfortunately, that's not the case, as much as I'd love that to happen. Secondly, educational reform is still possible under the model that I'm going to give you.
Okay, what I'm saying is that, as Vusi said, that the system was designed to bring us here. And for as long as we do not tackle it at grassroots level, I see in Dao. Now, what I also want to say is that we need
Thank you very much, leaders. Time is up. Leader 3, you can conclude your debate.
The wealth of a man is in his mind, not in his soil. For black majority to participate fully in the economy and for small businesses to thrive, loyalty to the African cause must be our guiding light. We need to call for ideological redefinition and to track to African nationalism and scientific socialism. Radical economic transformation begins in the mind. We need to emancipate ourselves. Thanks.
All right, Leader 6, it's your turn. Your 60 seconds start now.
There are 2.5 million SMEs in South Africa, but they're being suffocated. In order to uplift the most South Africans possible, especially the marginalized and disenfranchised, and grow without leaving anyone behind, there are 4 necessary conditions. Firstly, the state and the private sector need to fund SMEs and assist in the decentralization of economic activity. That is to say, continue implementing the US and Chinese models, funding models rather, decentralizing the economy by incorporating SMEs into value chains and creating more special economic zones. Secondly, we need radical innovation in technology and education, i.e. addressing the energy crisis, which is a massive hindrance to development, upskilling individuals in urban as well as rural areas, and redesigning the school curriculum. Thirdly, there have to be legislative reforms. For example, competition and labor law, and hopefully the establishing of something like a small claims commercial court for small businesses to actually achieve justice for themselves. Right? Fourthly, socioeconomic and political changes, specifically combating crime and addressing xenophobia.
Thank you very much, Leader 6. You have 90 seconds to engage.
All right. So SMEs face 4 problems under the status quo, right? It's limited bargaining power because of things like monopolies, cash flow constraints, skills and resource gaps, and a taxing regulatory environment, right? In my first argument, I briefly discussed instances of like US and Chinese funding models. So it's things like the National Science Foundation, the Small Business Innovation Research Program, and in China, CM Venture Capital. In a second. And in South Africa, we have something similar to this, but it's not being implemented in the same kinds of highly tangible ways. Sure.
Well, how do you decide or suggest that we end these cycles? So a couple of years ago, a white person would earn 3 times the average salary of a black person.
My next point deals with it.
And the wage gap has only
Next point deals with it. Got you. Okay, cool. So a very important way to empower SMEs is through the incorporation of SMEs into value chains, right? So the Tourism Enterprise Program in the early 2000s highlighted how integration of SMEs into value chains was incredibly beneficial, right? Value chain analysis is a very tangible way to get people working within the economy and giving small businesses power. I'll get you in a second. Thirdly, then there's the thing of
time is going. Black people have to pay a premium to operate within a regulatory and legislative environment.
Exists. I'm getting onto that right now. All right, so then in terms of like legal issues that we face, right? So obviously things like labor law and the Companies Act don't take into account the nuances of SMEs,
the cost
right?
of tax and business compliance for smaller businesses is higher in comparison.
So that's what we're saying.
The Companies Act. How do you deal with that?
The Companies Act can be amended. It currently doesn't cater to SMEs.
Time is
in the
up.
way
Thank
that we
you very much, leaders. Leader 6, you can conclude your debate.
I put forward a variety of nuanced mechanisms as well as explain the very direct correlation between the various problems which exist under the status quo and how these mechanisms address them in totality. And we specifically get 4 very important impacts. Individuals will have a more active role in the economy. We'll see greater infrastructural development at a state and a societal level. We're going to see tangible and much needed economic growth for the most vulnerable actor. And most importantly, panel, we get empowerment for the most vulnerable actor. I've never been prouder to propose.
Thank you very much, leaders, for that. Let me come to you, Ndumiso, your thoughts, please.
Sure. I think there were 2 interesting perspectives that were shared in this particular debate. One around the role of human behavior and the biases that exist in doing business. Because one of the things that exist in business is that people do business with people they like. Uzizi, you quite rightly mentioned in terms of the biases, in terms of the current economic standing. So if as a black person I don't like you, as a white person I won't do business with you, vice versa, which is an issue on its own. Bell highlighted a number of proximate sources of growth which relate to education outcomes, research, technology, which are all quite important. But I think why I find this debate quite interesting is that these 2 are not mutually exclusive. So that's where I think my issue comes, is that they're both very valid points. Here it deals with the conduct of human behavior, which is real in terms of human beings as agents of economic activity. And here we're dealing with the proximate sources of economic growth in addressing an environment that would enable SME development. So it's quite an interesting debate for me.
All right, Googs, the verdict?
This one goes to Bell.
All right, thank you very much. Congratulations to you, Leader 6. Our last debate will obviously be between Leader 2 and Leader 5. You guys are familiar with the rules of engagement. Let's begin your debate. Your time starts now.
Panel, kindly take down your pen so that we can just engage. I won't even look at my papers. Now let's have a layman's discussion about the economic system in South Africa. The people that complain about the economics are the ones that created it. The day and the year when Shoprite began being a supermarket, there was a black man's shop that began in Soweto. And guess what? Today in Soweto, Shoprite in Soweto makes the biggest and the largest economy and the largest profit. Where is that business, that supermarket that started at the same time when Shoprite was starting in Soweto, in the absence of Shoprite? That supermarket has perished. That supermarket has died. What is the problem that is happening? The problem is how we perceive business as people. Part of the reason that our businesses are falling and decaying in this society that we live in, it is that 55% of the times the SMEs, they are losing customers. They continuously have a loss of customers. How about you then go benchmark into how the Jews and the Muslims go about in doing their business? Because we all know.
Thank you very much, Leader 2. Leaders, you have 90 seconds to engage.
Chobani, you gave us problems, but I still don't understand what are the solutions.
Thank you, sir. As I was saying, let's go and benchmark from how the Jews, the Muslims, and the Islams that come into our country go about in doing their business. Look at all my friends that come into South Africa. They start small and spaza shops. Those spaza shops, they end up being big, large supermarkets because of how they run the ecosystem of their economy. What happens with my friend? My friend opens a business and then he starts selling things. If he has competition, he tells his other friend who is in another business that I have a competition. Let's go and use the same supplier. Okay. And once we get from the same supplier, the prices decrease. And if there's a need for me to decrease my prices, my brother helps me to alleviate the cost of the profit loss that I'm going to be having.
Let us educate South Africans. According to the National Development Plan, why is the sustainability of small businesses important? What are the 3 pillars that through the sustainability of SMEs, the government aims to achieve? The 3 pillars of because we are guided by that right now. So, because I don't get any solution, so let's educate South Africans. What, according to the NDP, is the government willing to achieve with the sustainability of small businesses?
I like the fact that he brings about the National Development Plan. In 2018, the then Minister of SMEs, Miss Chiveni, I'm not sure of how to pronounce the name. She said that in 2030, should wish that South Africa, we have 90% of jobs, employment being provided for. I'm going to your point.
Thank you very much. Time is up. It is now time to conclude your debate, Leader 2.
Okay, thank you. So what I was saying is, she said that by 2030, 90% of the jobs, they should be coming from SMEs. But guess what? Since then till today, 36% of those SMEs that were then, they have collapsed, they failed because of the problem, which was they did not have a direct interaction with the people in society. We like the fact that we have people in Mr. Nassim's company or NYTA supplementing and funding these companies. But the problem is we are having a disadvantage, which is the red tape that comes from the economical powerhouses. But we have the population advantage.
Thank you very much, Leader 2. We heard you loud and clear. Leader 5, it is your turn. Do you go ahead?
2 weeks ago, we debated about the fourth industrial revolution because it is the future. Therefore, any idea aimed at creating a conducive environment for small businesses to thrive must incorporate it. If not, these businesses will fail because they will not be sustainable in the future. How do we do this? South Africa is part of the G20, whose inclusive growth agenda includes digitization. We create incubation hubs, linking our SMEs with global experts to develop business ideas in a digital world. Be it toward e-commerce and e-procurement so that they can have sustainable value chains. We utilize the innovation hub that was incapacitated with 1.2 billion rands by the Minister of Finance in the budget speech to fund this business. We dismantle barriers to entry, particularly oligopolies characterized by the red tape, especially Section 32 of the Labour Relations Act, which reinforces the structural exclusion of small business into the economy by utilizing the Political Party Funding Act so that we can regulate the private funding of politics, so that we can break the influence these big corporations have on politics. We address spatial injustice because majority of the small businesses operate in the peripheries without infrastructure. According to the Global Economic Monitor report, South Africa falls below the sub-Saharan and global average of service and infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Leader 5. Your time is up. Leaders, you can engage.
Vusi, yes. you wish for us to look into subsidizing the already existing businesses so that they are able to compete. But then what happens when these companies that you subsidize, they don't have customers that come? You subsidize them,
okay,
they go,
let me answer you. I was talking about the fourth industrial revolution, and let me expatiate. The fourth industrial revolution is the future. So what must happen that we must incapacitate these institutions through knowledge. We already have programs like the Entrepreneurship Development Academy of the Gordon Institute of Business Science centered on two things: social change and innovation, fourth industrial revolution. So what we need to do is that we need to make sure that these businesses have access to internet through developing a mesh network which uses scattered node devices that is solar powered and sustainable. I'm not talking about something that is being implemented halfway across the world. I'm talking about something that is being implemented in the Eastern Cape, in the Mangosi community. Yes.
Vusi, you're telling us on equipping these businesses so that they can compete with the larger monopoly capitals. But these businesses, what happens when they start competing with these monopoly capitals and then they start dropping prices? That's what happened in 2010 when they were building stadiums. These monopolies, they decided to run at a lower price so that they can get the monopoly of business, the loss of customers. So how do we bring about incorporation of customers?
The reason why we must use the Political Party Funding Act is because economics and politics are not mutually exclusive. As they say, who pays the piper calls the tune.
How do you cater for the interest of politics?
The very same corporations that you say have oligopolized strategic sectors of the economy are the same ones that fund political parties who then deploy their members in parliament and pass the legislation.
Thank you very much. Your time is up. And Leader 5, you have 30 seconds to conclude.
The reason why we must utilize the Political Party Funding Act is because politics and economics are not mutually exclusive. The very same corporations that we say have oligopolized strategic sectors of the economy are the same ones who fund political parties who deploy their members in parliament and then pass legislation that reflect the interests of the big corporation. Section 32 of the Labour Relations is a perfect example of that. So with the Political Party Funding Act, we'd be able to hit two birds with one stone, break the influence of oligopolies and challenge the red tape that makes sure that small business do not have a place in small economy. The fourth industrial revolution is the future, and there's no hiding from it.
Thank you very much, leaders. Well done on that final debate. Let me go back to our guest judge. What are some of the pointers that struck you in this debate?
Yeah, so I think interesting approaches. I think the first debater took a point of the mindset of South Africans. Yeah. So if you look at Indian community or Jewish community, a lot of those people were migrants who came to South Africa. And somebody started a shop, and probably wasn't easy starting a shop. My grandparents were shopkeepers once upon a time. But there was a generational pass down. People say that, you know, Black people don't have an entrepreneurial mindset. They do, right? Go to the townships and the rural areas. You see that happening, yeah? But it's not going to happen in one generation. Wealth is created amongst many generations. And I just thought I'd raise that point.
Thank you very much for that. Ndumiso, let me come to you for the verdict.
The verdict is Vusi.
All right. Thank you very much. And congratulations to you, Leader 5. It is time for us to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll find out how our studio audience would have voted. Nambugeli unethuba lokuvotela umholi omthandayo. Remember that our voting lines will close Monday at noon. All you have to do to keep your favorite in the running is to SMS the word leader and their number to our SMS line, which is 34708 at a cost of R1.50. We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be back. Welcome back to One Day Leader. We're now in the final segment of our program tonight. We're about to hear what the judges have to say about their overall impressions of our leaders' contributions this evening. They'll comment on their debates and how they've tackled this issue. Ndumiso, let me start with you. Your overall impressions for today and your advice going into next week.
Sure, I think it's established that this was a big topic. There are a lot of things and there are a lot of moving parts. But I think what we're finding as judges, the more we look at the scoreboard, the instances where other candidates are edging out other candidates is on engagement and research and so on. The passion is great and all of that, and sometimes particular narratives or phrases are great and they're all good and well. But oftentimes then the lack of being well researched comes out quite strongly. Because when you're thrown with a question that was not part of your position, it's evident. And as judges, we then score very lowly as a consequence of that. And when it comes to the ultimate scores, it becomes quite clear.
Thank you very much for that, Googs.
I think the biggest thing is about the research, because I also think we must remember, in addition to presenting your point, you are also presenting your ability, or what we hope to see is your ability to have engaged with material that exists. We're not necessarily looking for completely new ideas. What we are looking for is ideas that are rooted in some kind of reality. Hence, one of the metrics we score you on is practical solutions.
Thank you very much, judges, for your contribution tonight. Before the break, our studio audience had an opportunity to vote for their favorite. And let us take a look at who this week's favorite is out of our 6 leaders. Tonight, we say congratulations to Leader 5. You were the audience favorite. Thank you once again to our fantastic audience for voting and our judges for their adjudication. Let's now take a look at the overall episode scoreboard.
At the end of this episode, Vusi is leading with 6 points and Zanele is still lagging behind with no point. Gaze kuyolunga nini.
Mbugeli, now lapha ekhaya ungakhohlwa ukuthi we'll be showing your voting results at the top of next week's episode. Ngakho-ke khipha ifone, ufake airtime, qhubeka uvotela umholi omthandayo. Voting will close on Monday at midday. A big thank you to our candidates, our judges, our studio audience, and of course you at home for joining us for this episode of One Day Leader. We'll be discussing yet another thought-provoking topic. Before I go, I'll leave you with this quote. Fixing markets isn't enough. We must actively shape and create them and tilt the playing field in the direction of the growth we want. And that is from world-renowned economist Mariana Mazzucato. From myself, Shongwe, and the rest of the One Day Leader team, it's good night.